Good evening. My name's Cliff Cahealy. I'm the city manager, and I want to thank you for coming out to our Town Hall Tuesday tonight about our tax rate election. Tonight we're here to present information about the upcoming election. So one of the biggest questions we get is, why are we having an election? Well, in 2019, the state legislature implemented Senate Bill 2, which, among other things, limited the amount of revenue municipality could collect to just 3.5% from the previous year's revenue. This does not include any revenue from new growth. In order to generate the revenue needed to fund all of the community's priorities, the City Council voted on a tax rate of 0.69 cents per $1,000 value, which is an increase of about 0.3186 cents over last year's tax rate. With this tax rate election, the City Council has effectively placed the budget decisions for the community into the hands of the citizens. Thus, an election is required for citizens to vote for or against the new tax rate. The proposed tax rate was prepared based off of input from citizens gathered throughout the past year. We start off with a citizen survey, which is ongoing right now for next year, and that helps us determine where the citizen priorities are. Then the council hosts several policy retreats, town hall meetings, district meetings to gather input from citizens about city services and the needs in the community. In the summer, we hold a budget workshop, and we also hold 3 budget input meetings at city council meetings. And that's to gain as much input as we can in the preparation of the budget and what services the citizens would like for the city to provide. Our annual budget has to take into account the services that we are providing, the maintenance of our existing infrastructure, and compensating our employees who provide the services each and every day. And while we are a growing community, our revenues are just not keeping up with the needs that we are seeing. We need more funding for road repairs. We need to continue to increase the number of police officers to keep up with our growing population. We need another fire station to serve the growing parts of our community to our south, and to keep firefighters in areas where the stations are currently. And we have an ever-increasing number of behavioral health issues in our community that need special attention. In order to get more details on the election, we'd like to share some of the brief information from Police Chief Gill and Fire Chief Wilson, and I'm going to ask them to come up and do their presentations next.
As you can see by the slide, we're looking for 4 new police officer positions and increased pay for all police personnel. I'm going to talk about the police officer positions on the next couple of slides, and I'm going to break it down into 3 and 1 because that's how I want to allocate those resources. In terms of pay really becomes a big factor for us in recruiting and retention. Much more in recruiting than retention. Most people won't leave an organization because of pay only. But it certainly is a factor, especially if the pay gets, significantly out of line. For recruiting, we compete with every other city in North Central Texas. A lot of them are like us, civil service, which means the first step is a test. We give a test on Friday night or Saturday morning, and if they don't know anything about the city other than what they see, the lowest paid loses when we compete head to head. And so we commonly see the last 5 tests that we've given, some other agency has tested on the same day. And that's not uncommon because there's only a certain number of weeks that you can give a test. And, we don't test right after Thanksgiving. There's a lot of holidays that we have to pass. And so it makes it harder to get new people in, especially when we're competing directly with others. We have our beats. As you can see, we have a large area in the south end that those beats in the south end are much larger than the beats in the north end. There's a lot less people that live in the far south end of the city, but those numbers are going up. And so what we see is when we look at response times, in the average of the beats from 1 to 8 is 3.84 minutes to get a police officer there for a priority call. In 9, it is about 4.5 minutes. So it's just about 45 seconds longer, which isn't that bad. unless, you're the person who needs that emergency response and you're waiting an additional 45 seconds out there. Where we really see the big issue is the second unit that arrives. In 1 through 8, it takes about 6 minutes for the second officer to arrive on the scene of a call. So it's about 2 minutes that person is by himself on the call. In 9 beat, it is almost 9 minutes to get that second officer there. So you've got an additional 4 minutes that first officer who arrived is waiting for another officer to get there. And so that becomes an officer safety issue because he is by himself out there for a significant amount of time. It also becomes a safety issue for the citizens because an officer is more likely to use force or even deadly force when he's by himself as opposed to when he has additional units or additional resources with him. The charter also requires that we have 1.6 officers per 1,000 residents plus 5%, and that is just to maintain staffing levels. And so with our current population, we need 4 additional officers to maintain that staffing level. The other thing that's significant for us is if we could approve this tonight and I could hire these 4 officers tonight, I can't hire them for the next academy. So I'm not going to be able to hire them until the March academy, which means they're not going to be through training and through field training until spring to early summer of 25. So it takes a long time to get officers through training, and so if we fall behind now, that becomes a bigger and bigger problem as we look down the road. So I want the 3 for that, and I want 1 for an additional school resource officer. Right now we have Officer Ferris pictured here. He works with Officer Hill. We hired, we bought him last year. He is our gun dog. He works out of Horn High School right now, and he does a phenomenal job. His job is to detect firearms, and so he is at Horn High School. We use him at all schools, but his primary focus is at Horn High School. And so if there's an emergency at another school, he will leave Horn High School and go to the other school. That kind of creates a problem for us if there's an emergency at North and he has to go, we don't want to take an SRO from North to backfill Horn because there's an emergency at North. And so it leaves Horn without an extra officer there. Horn really needs 3 officers. The NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, based on school size, recommends a certain number of officers. Horn is 3. All the other high schools except Vanguard are 2. Vanguard only requires 1. And so we will pull him to go to other schools routinely and swap SROs, but that's not ideal either because the SROs develop a relationship with their students at their school. And so if I'm a student at a school, I want to talk to my SRO. And so if I take Officer Mitchell from North and put him at Horn for the day so that I can get Hill up at North, nobody wants to talk to Officer Mitchell because they don't know him. They want to go to the 2 SROs that they know. And so giving us this extra officer, what we want to do is move Officer Hill to Vanguard, which again does not need a K-9 or second SRO there, but it'll free him up to respond to any school throughout the day, hit multiple schools in a day, and not take away a position that is needed at that school. And so we think the benefit of Officer Ferris and his nose and his ability to find guns is useful at every school campus in Mesquite, not just Horn. And so we want 3 to help us with response time, and I want 1 to work at the school so that we can have better coverage for Officer Ferris. And I'll turn it over to Chief Wilson.
Well, good evening, and thank you for being here. Appreciate this opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about the fire department and from a strategic level what we're trying to do for that coverage where the city is growing and meet the needs of the fire department and ultimately the needs of our citizens. So a little bit about the fire department and what we're needing is right now we need 14 additional firefighters for staffing of the new station that Mr. Kahili spoke of earlier, and we need funding for the construction and equipment for that new fire station number 8 that will be out on that southeastern edge of the city. And of course there you see it again, just as Chief Gill mentioned, competitive pay. There's no secret that we're competing with cities all around us, so we need to maintain that competitive pay to keep quality personnel. So if you just think of the beats that he was describing just a minute ago, that correlates to what we call fire response districts. So right now we have 7 fire stations that are strategically placed around the city. Those are placed based off of empirical science and data that we watch closely. And we have to maintain those low response times for both fire and EMS. Go ahead. So where we're hurting, and this focuses on the area of growth, that rapid growth is down along I-20. So if you just picture in your mind's eye, when we have a station that's out, so let's theoretically just say, for illustration purposes, Station 7 responds down to that far southeastern area along that I-20 corridor. Every station shifts its response district down so that we can maintain coverage of the entire city. Go ahead. Okay, so this shows you what's going on down there and why we need that new station so badly, why that's necessary down there. We have to be able to provide that, not just fire response, rapid fire response, and emergency medical services to those areas. And you can see, and I won't go through all the numbers, you can see those, but those are rooftops that are planned right now. So we know the growth is coming. We already know that. But our response times, again, are based on empirical science. We have to respond in a timely manner because on an EMS call, after 5 minutes, brain death occurs if it's a cardiac-related event. With a fire, we have to get water on the seat of a fire within so many minutes, or we have a phenomenon called flashover, where a room and contents fire becomes a full-blown structure fire. It's like everything in this room heating up to its combustible temperature and just going off all at once. And once that happens, it is a full-blown structure fire at that point. So if we can beat that time and we can have that water on the seat of the fire under that time, then we can keep control of that fire. So this is some of our response time data. If you look at it citywide, our EMS calls, we're looking at 5 minutes and 32 seconds. And I want to point out that this time frame was from January 1 to September 15 when we took this snapshot. Number of calls, citywide EMS calls, look at that. Over 9,000 EMS calls in that time frame. Folks, we respond to a lot of EMS calls, and we are a very busy fire department. Structure fires, our response times are tracking right now at 4 minutes and 52 seconds. We've had 90 calls for structure fires during that time frame. Other fires would include things like dumpster fires, grass fires, etc. So this is, if you just took out Dallas County, the Dallas County portion of Mesquite, and this would be how it reflects in the data right now, and then let's do the Kaufman. This is Kaufman County. Look at the difference. You think we need a station down there, folks? We need a fire station down there in the worst way. When we start tracking that data, goes up to 15 minutes and 14 seconds for an EMS call. I'm going to say the same thing Chief Gill said. If you're the one waiting on that call, waiting for those personnel to get there, that's an eternity. So if you look over at our other fires, and we didn't have any structure fires in what we call our 900 boxes, which is that area, then it's 15 minutes and 50 seconds. So that's unacceptable times for us. We have to do something about that. So here's how it breaks down for staffing for that station. So we would have an engine there that would be stationed there. We would have an ambulance that would be stationed there. To staff an engine, it takes 4 people. So we have 4 positions on the fire engine. We have 2 positions on the ambulance. Now, the way the fire service works is we have an A, B, and C shift. We work 24-hour shifts. So at 7 a.m. this morning, a shift came on, a fresh group of personnel. They'll work till 7 a.m. tomorrow. Let's say that was A shift. Then B shift will relieve them. C shift will come in the next day and relieve B shift, and then it starts over again. So we have 3 shifts. And that's why you see times 3. So we need a total of 12 warm bodies to staff those positions, if you will, and 6 on the ambulance, and then that will be a total of 18. Now, we're different than people, and I always have to explain this to people because we're a different animal when it comes to this. If I have an office worker call in sick tomorrow, or they take a day of vacation, or whatever, they take any of their owed benefit time off, that office will just sit empty that day. They're an office worker, so, and we do have several staff positions. But if it's someone on that engine, I got to have 4 people. So we've got to have somebody to slide into that position. So we would hire with a staffing factor of 1.25, and that's what that means. For every 1 person, we're going to hire 0.25 of another person, if that makes sense. And I know it doesn't, but I think you're tracking me here. So a total of 23 people total to fill all those positions and require the backup that would be needed when somebody's taking that benefit time off. Now, we've already had 9 firefighters authorized to be hired, and we have hired those. So 9 have been hired, but we're lacking 14. So if we're going to staff this station, as it says, with 23 firefighters, 365, it's 24/7, 365 for us. So we have to have personnel to match that. So again, 9 of those have already been hired, but it's the 14 that we still need to hire in order to staff that station.
Thank you, Chief Wilson. And just to follow up, it takes about 2 years from the day that we hire a firefighter to put that firefighter into service. So that is, if you're looking at the timing of when we're trying to put these things in place, we're making decisions that are a couple of years out. I wanted to address streets, because that is another component of our election tax rate. I'm sure some of y'all may have driven over a pothole on your way here. Each year the city adds more and more dollars to our street repair funds. This goes for streets and alleys. And this is divided up into in-house maintenance that are done by city crews, and also for contracted construction projects. The additional money in the budget is primarily for that additional maintenance work to repair different sections of streets that are long past their useful life. These are the projects you see that we do with either an asphalt patch or a full depth repair. The tax rate election will also allow for additional debt capacity for some larger projects like Lucas Boulevard and Oates Drive. And this will increase the ability to hire contractors to do the full roadway. And a lot of people ask why are the streets the way they are? It is mainly because of weather-related impacts. When it's hot, the ground gets brittle underneath and contracts, and the pavement moves. Then when the rain comes, just like we've had this fall, the ground expands. So when that pavement has moved, it's moving again. So it's constant movement, and then you add all of the traffic and the wear and tear on it, and then just over time, concrete just ages out. And this has just become as an older and aging city, it's become a challenge for us to try to keep up. And so the more money we can put into our roadway repair funds, the more repairs we can make to try to catch up. The funding in this year's budget also sets aside for what we call a pavement condition index. And we did one of these about 7 years ago, and this allows, this is a equipment that videos and uses laser analysis to assess the condition of the pavement, identifies all the potholes, where the concrete is separating, and they add in the age factor as well. And it gives us a really good priority list in which we can strategically place our dollars to the worst sections of streets. But it's an ongoing problem that we will be facing for many years. And again, every budget we try to add more and more dollars to that fund. The last thing we wanted to cover tonight is behavioral health division. This is a new division that we would like to implement with this budget year's funds. And many of you may not know that the city of Mesquite, in partnership with other area cities, received a grant to create a crisis response team that focused on mental and behavioral health issues. Prior to establishing this team, all of these calls were handled by police officers. Through the grant funding, the team has made significant progress in becoming a resource for the entire community. We've prepared a video to share some of the successes and a little bit more about this program, which we will share right now.
In 2023, nearly 1/4 of adults in the U.S. experience some form of mental illness. Mental illness affects people from all demographics and often manifests in a crisis which can cause harm not only to the person experiencing mental illness, but also their family and friends. In most cases, a mental health crisis results in a call to 911 requesting assistance from police officers to intervene. As the number of these types of calls has increased, it has placed a strain on our public safety agencies. Behavioral health calls require public safety personnel to be on the scene longer, preventing them from responding to other high-priority calls. While all Mesquite police officers receive training in mental health response and how to de-escalate situations, they are not always equipped to provide resources or assistance to people in crisis. In 2021, the cities of Mesquite, Sunnyvale, Balk Springs, and Seagoville formed the Southeast Alliance Community Care Team to address this growing problem and provide an alternative approach to public safety response involving a mental health crisis. This program utilizes grant funding from Dallas County to hire and equip civilian personnel trained in responding to mental health calls and provides additional social service support for responding police officers and firefighters. The team is made up of a licensed social worker and a paramedic with a responsibility to assist officers on the initial call and eventually take over. The care team assists individuals to ensure they are connected to mental health service providers and often provides transportation to these services. The team also helps families with finding professional services and programs available in the area. The care team regularly makes follow-up visits to make sure people are receiving the services needed. Most importantly, follow-up visits help prevent another crisis and calls to 911. Since its creation in November 2021, the care team has responded to more than 1,200 calls for service. Starting with one team, the program quickly grew to 2 teams based on the need in the 4 cities. Service is currently available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. In November 2023, a 3rd team will begin responding to late-night calls until 2 a.m. Another responsibility of the care team and the city's behavioral health division is responding to people experiencing homelessness. In recent years, the homeless population has grown significantly in our area. The care team is responsible for identifying homeless encampments and making contact with the people living there. The team provides medical assessments and works to place individuals with service providers that can provide temporary or long-term housing and other services needed by this population. The care team also assists with spreading information about inclement weather and transporting people to shelters when needed. Through the collaboration with neighboring cities, grant funding has been able to cover almost 3 years of service. As the end of the grant funding approaches, each city involved in the Southeast Alliance have committed to continuing funding for the CARE Team program, ensuring that this vital service continues. The Southeast Alliance Community Care Team has become an essential service to the Mesquite community through its compassionate and professional approach to our citizens experiencing mental illness and homelessness. It serves as a model for other communities on how to respond to people in crisis with less public safety presence. Officers and paramedics have quickly adapted to calling out the care team as it serves as another tool in their toolkit to keep residents, police officers, and firefighters safe.
So as the video mentioned, the grant that's funding the community care team runs out next year. The revenue provided from the election would help fully fund the team when the grant ends and to continue the partnership with the other cities. I'm very proud of the progress that we've made with this team, and the new division will add more resources to assist this team with their efforts to address behavioral health in the community. We've also talked a lot about the budget offers, including the election, and now I'd like to share a video that summarizes what you've seen here tonight and addresses some of the questions that we've heard from citizens about the election.
In November, residents of Mesquite will have the opportunity to vote on several community priorities: streets, community care, and public safety. In recent community surveys, street maintenance and public safety were ranked by citizens as the biggest issues Mesquite will face in the next 5 years. To address these concerns and more, the Mesquite City Council unanimously approved the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget, which increases the city's property tax rate by 0.03186 cents over last year's rate. The City of Mesquite's new budget includes additions for city streets, community care, and public safety. Additions include 4 new police officer positions, 14 new firefighter positions, funding for equipping and building the new Fire Station Number 8 in Trinity Point, additional funding for street and alley repair and reconstruction, expanded behavioral health care and youth services for the community, and competitive pay for public safety and general government staff. The additional revenue is needed to keep up with increasing costs for labor and construction. An increase in the tax rate will allow the city to keep public safety response times low and respond to growth in the community. It will also address increasing needs for infrastructure repair and replacement in older parts of the community. In addition, the city's care team has responded to 1,198 calls involving mental health and homelessness since November 2021. Funding is needed to establish a behavioral health division and to continue the community care team response, as well as add staffing to address homelessness and youth issues in the community. State law requires that Mesquite voters approve this year's tax rate, which exceeds the 3.5% voter approval tax rate. Proposition A will be on the November ballot for Mesquite voters to vote for or against the proposition. This is the way Proposition A will read on the November ballot. Approving the ad valorem tax rate of 0.69000 cents per $100 valuation in the city of Mesquite, Texas for the current year, a rate that is 0.05189 cents higher per $100 valuation than the voter approval tax rate of the city of Mesquite, Texas, for the purpose of increasing staff for the police department, increasing funding for equipment, construction and staffing for the fire department to open Station Number 8 Trinity Point, increasing funding for roadway construction and maintenance, establishing a behavioral health division, enhancing citywide services and competitive pay for public safety personnel. Last year, the ad valorem tax rate in the city of Mesquite, Texas was 0.65814 cents per $100 valuation. Early voting will take place October 23rd through November 3rd, and Election Day is November 7th. How might this election impact residents and individuals over 65 years of age? If Proposition A is approved by voters, the average homeowner would pay about $16 more per month in city taxes based on the average property value in Mesquite. The tax rate would not impact property owners who have qualified for the age 65 or older homestead exemption with their property appraiser. How will the revenue generated from Proposition A be allocated? Proposition A will provide revenue for the approved budget and will allocate funds for the following. 4 additional Mesquite police officer positions will be funded to increase neighborhood patrols. 14 additional Mesquite firefighter positions for staffing the new Fire Station Number 8. Equipment and construction funding for Station Number 8. Additional funding for street and alley repair and reconstruction. Funding to create a behavioral health division to oversee the community care team program and address homelessness issues in the community. And funding for competitive pay for all public safety and general government positions. For more information on the tax election, voting dates, locations, FAQs, voter resources, and more, please visit cityofmesquite.com/2023 tax election.
So one of the more confusing aspects of a tax rate election is the proposition language that you will see on the ballot. Remember, this is City of Mesquite Proposition A, and there are a number of state propositions on the ballot as well, and those are labeled 1, 2, 3, for however many those are. I did want to share once again just the language and read it again, and just to make sure it's clear. So approving the ad valorem tax rate of .69000 per $100 valuation in the City of Mesquite, Texas for the current year, a rate that is .05189 higher per $100 valuation than the voter approval tax rate of the City of Mesquite, Texas, for the purpose of increasing staff for the police department, increasing funding for equipment, construction and staffing for the fire department to open Station Number 8, Trinity Point, increasing funding for roadway construction and maintenance, establishing a behavioral health division, enhancing citywide services, and competitive pay for public safety personnel. Last year, the ad valorem tax rate in the City of Mesquite, Texas was .65814 per $100 valuation. One question many people have asked us is, what happens if Proposition A fails? Essentially, the city will need to approve a new budget based on the revenues obtained through the lower tax rate. It will basically mean there will be longer implementation time for projects like Fire Station Number 8, the addition of officers, and many of the proposed items will not be funded in 2024. We will still repair streets, and we will still respond to fire and police calls. We just won't do as many streets as we would like, and some of the response times may increase. So just as a reminder, the election is coming up on November 7th, and early voting is from October 23rd through November 3rd. The times and locations will be published on the city's website once all the locations are confirmed. You can visit www.cityofmesquite.com/2023 tax election for that information and more. We will continue to put up frequently asked questions on that website as questions come into us.